Hello, good people of YouTube, Mountbatten here, and today we are answering the question, is it viable to run a secondary build on the Italian battleships? So this is a question that isn't completely unwarranted because during the development cycle of the Italian battleships, they were supposed to have, in Wargaming's own words, short range but accurate secondary guns. However, that got tossed out during development. And now, with the secondary skills and the way secondaries work now, the question is, can you still run a viable secondary build? And if you look at, let's say, the Laponto, for instance, she does have a lot of secondary guns. However, the issue that I have with it, and that many people have noticed, is that most of her secondary battery is made up of 90mm guns, which can only pin 15mm of armor. That's not a lot of armor. That's barely the superstructure on destroyers even. So, yeah, right off the bat, my initial answer was no. You can't really run a viable secondary build on these Italian battleships, because if you go down to the lower tier ships, they all have plenty of these 90mm guns on there. Now, on the Laponto, it does get 3 sets of the 152s on either side of the ship in triple mounted turrets, and those can 25mm of armor, so those are much more useful. But even if we're talking about it just at tier 9, people will say that the FDG, whose secondaries, most of them can only pin 26mm of armor, they say that that's useless, even though I don't agree with that. But applying that same logic to the 152s, which can only pin 25mm of armor, then it should be just no right there. But in the name of science, I went ahead and ran a test on the Lepanto, the highest tier Italian battleship we can get right now. The Colombo will be coming out later, but I think it's pretty much more the same in terms of secondaries, lots of 90mm guns, and then some 152s scattered here and there. So what I did was I went to a training room and I put 3 bots on the enemy team. I put a Montana, the tier 10 US battleship, the Minotaur, the tier 10 British light cruiser, and then the Khabarovsk, the tier 10 Soviet destroyer, ships that the Laponto is very likely to run into, such as a tier 9. The tier 9s are constantly being up-tiered to tier 10. But to get a good baseline, I took out the Grosser Kurve first, because the Grosser Kurve first is one of the best secondary battleship, well, actually the best secondary battleship in the game right now. Both ships have the same captain and module builds, as much as I could get on the Laponto's commander. He's only a 19-point commander, but you can still get a full secondary build in with just 17 points. I say just 17 points, you know. Like, it was, I think it was only like, what, 12, 14 beforehand, and now it's a 17-point build. Thank you, rework. But anyway, so what I did was I timed the amount of time it took for the GK to gun down the Khabarovsk, the Minotaur, and the Montana, and here are the results for the Grosser Kurve first. And I do have Lucians on here, but do keep in mind that the commander skills, the special commander talents do not work in the training room, so it's not like he got his secondary armament expert skill talent popped and therefore boosted the reload time. So anyway, the GK, it took the GK 1 minute 28 seconds to melt down the Khabarovsk, 1 minute 44 seconds to melt down the Minotaur, and then 2 minutes and 55 seconds to melt down the Montana. So that's our baseline. That's one of the best secondary battleships in the game. And then the Laponto, and these results might actually surprise you. It actually did surprise me. So Laponto, it took the Laponto 1 minute and 22 seconds to burn down the Khabarovsk. Took the Laponto 2 minutes and 18 seconds to burn down the Minotaur, so lost there. It took the Laponto 2 minutes 52 seconds to melt down the Montana. So, color me surprised. Now, keep this in mind. This was in a training room where they were bots, they weren't active, they weren't even moving. And if you compare the end results, it tells a much different stories. Because right now you might be thinking, oh, well, dang, she got better secondaries than GK. She burnt down the cab and the Montana faster than the GK. She did, but let's take a look at the end results there. So, if we look at the detailed results screen for the GK, it should be on the left for you guys, and the Laponto should be on the right for you guys. So, let's take a look at the GK first. The GK fired 1,434 secondary shells. She hit 639 of those shells. Of those shells, she did 93,864 damage in pure pins. So that's almost 100,000 damage in just pins, just from the shells hitting the ship and detonating on the inside of the ship. She did 68,000 damage in fires. She started 9 fires. Fires don't care about armor. They don't really care about tier. All they care about is your health and burning it. So that's how she got her damage in. Alright, let's look at the Laponto now. Should be on the right hand side of your screen. So the Laponto fired 2,154 shells and landed 978. So off the bat, both of these ships have roughly around 50% hit ratio, again against unarmed bots in a training room, sitting still from about 4 to 5 kilometers away from each other. So the Laponto did 61,298 damage through pins. I can promise you that's all the 152s, and maybe a little bit of the 90s hitting the superstructure on some of these ships. So already she's almost half under the GK in terms of pin damage. Let's take a look at the fires. She started 14 fires that did 100,802 damage. So, yeah, that's a lot of damage through fires, not gonna lie. However, keep in mind too, again, these are bots. No commander skills, no modules. So there's no fire prevention on these ships, there's no of the damage con modules, there's nobody popping damage con on these ships. These ships are just sitting here and taking it. So while Training Room can tell us one thing, real life, and, well, random battles tells us something else. So, upon seeing these results, I did head into random battles with the secondary built Laponto, and let me tell you, it's pretty painful. I played a couple rounds in it, definitely tanked my average damage done in the Laponto. If the interesting teams that I got last night didn't do it, the couple rounds I played on her today most certainly did. So, my experience in secondary build Laponto is that it's okay for like finishing off very low health destroyers, because the 152s will pin the DD armor, but you have to give up so much on just the Laponto too. This is the high tier one. This is one of the better Italian battleships. You have to give up so much. You have to give up, well, first off, most of us only have, even if we have a maxed out commander right now, well, maxed out in terms of like 19-point commander, because Italian battleships are an entirely new line. Not many of us had Italian captains just sitting around ready to go. This is my Venezia captain, for example. And again, he's only 19 points. So that means I can't spec into concealment. I can't spec into discount superintendent that gives me an extra heal if I want to go full secondary build. Which means I have a much larger detection range. You don't get Deadeye. And you only get a 10-kilometer range on your secondary guns. And, 10 kilometers pre-commander rework would actually be pretty darn decent. But now it's not really, especially considering, the GK can get out to 12.5, and it can get its reload buff at 12.5 kilometers, where the Laponto, to get its reload buff with the secondary skills to the main battery guns, you have to be within 10 kilometers of a enemy ship. Now, of course, you have the smoke screen, and you can use that to get a bit closer and get yourself out of bad situations. That is true. But you just give up so much potential with your main battery, with that sap, with that lovely, lovely sap munition. You have to take the 37-second reload instead of the reload module. You gotta take the secondary reload module. So now you have a 37-second reload on your main battery guns, when you could have a 32-second reload. And with the main battery guns, you're chunking ships for like 15, 16, 17k with sap through their superstructure and through the lighter armored portions of their ship. But with the secondaries, you're really depending upon 3 turrets to do any pin damage per side. And then the rest of the 90mm guns, you're just praying that they start a fire, which, as we saw in the training room, is pretty darn decent at doing that. But in the game, players have anti-fire builds, they have brains, they use damage con. You know, they're not going to sit there and just let you burn them like bots are. So, technically, a secondary build on the Italian battleships, the higher tier ones at least, can work. Is it worth it though? In my opinion, absolutely not. I just don't think giving up all that potential damage from your main battery guns is worth, you know, just depending upon fires, because fires again are RNG based. With the GK, pins are going to happen. You know, can it overpin? Can it pin the armor? Yes or no? Yes, you're going to do damage, and you might set a couple fires along the way. I mean, GK still set 9 fires on these ships. With the Laponto, it's like, okay, will my secondary start a fire now? They very well might, because the 90mm guns do have a 5% chance of starting a fire with like a 2.9 second reload once you get the secondary modules and skills on there, so they do have a good chance of that, but players can just, again, damage con and run away from you. So it's not really worth it, in my opinion, at least. You're giving up just way too much in the main battery guns. The SAP, the main battery guns, that's the highlight of the Italian battleship line, and it's not really worth it to spec into the secondaries, because you're giving up a lot of survivability too. You're giving up your extra heal, that concealment range. It's just not worth it, in my opinion. So there you have it. You can do it. It's just not worth it. Or if you do it, you're going to have a very interesting time pulling it off. And if you're doing it, and if it's working for you, that is fantastic. I am happy for you. But I think, for me at least, I'm going to stick with my main battery build on my Laponto. Anyway, guys, let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Are you going to run a secondary build on your Italian battleships, or are you going to stick with a main battery build? I'm interested to hear what you guys are going to do. Anyway, guys, hope you're having a wonderful Monday. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to drop a like and subscribe to the channel. We are on our way now to 25,000 subscribers. I cannot thank you guys enough for that. Again, guys, hope you're having a wonderful Monday. Hope to catch you guys in the next one.